Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Nora Azin binti Ibrahim and I am excited to introduce my team members which are Anissa Najat, Naim Firdaus, Nur Arisa Maira and Nurul Alia Arisha. Today we are going to present the case of HLM Sdn Bhd versus UDA Land South Sdn Bhd 2010 MLJU 128, a significant dispute in the context of practical and sectional completions. Okay, next. The first is background of the dispute. This case involved two parties, which is the plaintiff HLM Sdn Bhd and the defendant UDA Land South Sdn Bhd. The central issue was whether the deduction of 668,000 ringgit only as a LAD for the period from 14 April 2004 to 27 September 2004 was lawful. The plaintiff claimed the LAD deduction was unjustified since they achieved practical completion within the extended time frame. Meanwhile, the defendant argued that the completion date also included the issuance of the Certificate of Fitness for Occupation, CFO. Okay, next. Moving to chronology of event, based on the sequences of events that shape this case, on 4 June 2002, the agreement was signed between the two parties. The original completion date was set, which is on 19 March 2003, but later extended multiple times to 13 April 2004. Practical completion was achieved by the plaintiff on the extended date. However, the CFO was only issued on 27 September 2004. Following this, interim payment certificates number 23 and number 24 included LAD deductions for the period between 1 February 2005 and 30 September 2005. This date highlight the contention regarding what constitutes completion under the contract. Okay, next. The next is analysis of arguments. The plaintiff contended that practical completion was achieved on time as per the extended deadline of 13 April 2004. They argue that the issuance of the CFO on 27 September 2004 was beyond their control and therefore the LAD deduction was unreasonable and outside the contractual terms. The defendants, however, claimed that the date of completion included the issuance of the CFO as specified in the contractual process. They justified the LAD deduction for the period after 13 April 2004. This clash of interpretation was pivotal in determining whether the LAD deduction were lawful. Okay, next. For the legal principles used, the court relied on specified contractual clauses to resolve the dispute. Clause 39 addressing the completion of work and the issuance of the CFO. For the clause 40 regarding the imposition of LAD for failure to complete by stipulated date, and clause 43 allowing extensions of time. After careful review, the court found that there was no breach of contract as practical completion occurred on 13 April 2004 within the extended time frame. Furthermore, the LAD imposition was deemed unlawful as the works were completed according to contractual requirements. Okay, next. In its judgment, the court ruled in favor of the plaintiff, HLM Sdn Bhd. The court declared that the LAD deduction of 668,000 ringgit was unlawful as practical completion was achieved on time. Consequently, the plaintiff was awarded the 668,000 ringgit along with 8% interest from the date of judgment until the payment. This decision emphasizes the importance of clear contractual terms and adherence to practical completion definitions in disputes. Okay, next, I will pass to the next presenter.
Okay, thank you, Aziz. In this section, I will focus on the provisions in the relevant standard contract form, especially PWD Form 203A Revision 1 2010 that deal with handling disputes. What is PWD Form 203A Revision 1 2010? It is for government construction projects that manage timelines, payments, and defines the roles of the employer, contractor, and superintending officer. In this case, these provisions outline the responsibilities and procedures related to practical completion, sectional completion, extensions of time, certificate of non-completion, and certificate and payment, which are central to the current disputes. Next, let's break down the key clauses related to practical completion. It is the stage when the site is complete enough for the employer to use it despite minor unfinished work that does not affect functionality. Clause 39.1 states that the contractor must complete the work by the specified date for completion unless granted an extension under clause 43 and subject to clauses 38.3 and 41. Clause 39.5 requires the work must meet all contract conditions before being considered practically finished. Besides, Clause 39.3 highlights that the superintending officer must inspect the work within 14 days of the contractor's notice. The defects liability period starts when the SO issues the certificate of practical completion confirming that the work meets practical completion standards. The absence of a certificate of non-completion confirms compliance. Thus, in a recent case, HLM Cinderan Berhad found the defendant's claims for liquidated ascertained damages invalid. This was because the work met the practical completion standards, was finished on time, and the superintending officer raised no objections. Next. Next, clause 43 and 40 cover extensions of time and damages for non-completion and how these provisions are linked to reaching practical completion. Clause 43.1 states that if work is delayed, the contractor must notify the superintending officer in writing, providing reasons and supporting documents. The SO will assess the delay and take action in if the completion date including any extensions is missed, impacting the timeline for practical completion. HLM Sendirian Berhad applied for an extension of time which was granted. The revised completion date was set for 13 April 2004, allowing the project to stay on track and achieve practical completion.
Thank you, Alia. We will continue to the next part. Moving to the next clause, which is clause 40, damages for non-completion. Clause 40.1 highlights that if the contractor fails to finish the work by the agreed date or any extended date under clause 43, the superintending officer SO must issue a certificate of non-completion CNC. This is linked to the practical completion stages as it confirms whether the project was completed on time. Therefore, no CNC was issued in this case, confirming that the work was completed on time and practically finished. There was no damage for non-completion. Next, clause 28 deals with payment to the contractor and interim certificates. Clause 28.3 stated that the following the valuation outlined in clause 28.1 or 28.2, the SO must issue an interim certificate within 14 days. This certificate details the amount owed to the contractor minus any deduction allowed under the contract. The plaintiff issued 24 interim payment certificate IPCs following the corrected procedure. However, the defendant deducted 668,000 as liquidated ascertained damage LAD for delays between April 14, 2004 and September 27, 2004. The plaintiff argued that the work was completed on April 13, 2004 and that the LAD deduction were unjustified as they were unrelated to delays in obtaining the Certificate of Fitness for Occupation CFO. The next part is about the sectional completion. Sectional completion under clause 41 allows for sectional completion where specified sections are completed and occupied independently. Each section must have separate completion dates and LAD provisions. Provisions include the Certificate of Practical Completion (CPC), Extension of Time (EOT), Liquidated Asset and Damage (LAD), and Defect Liability Period (DLP) are all the same as in the Practical Completion section. The lack of clear sectional LAD provision can undermine claims for delays in individual section. For this case between HLM Sdn Bhd and UDA Land South, the contract identified section completion for 70 single-story terrace house with attics and 202 single-story terrace house, but did not specify separate LAD rates. The court invalidated the defendant's LAD claim for the entire project. This is due to the omission emphasizing the needed for clear contractual terms.
So thank you, Anissa. Moving on is the lesson learned for these cases. So what are the best strategies that we can use to avoid disputes based on these law cases? So the first lesson is by having much more clear contractual definitions. So based on the cases, there is a lack of clarity on whether practical completion is based on obtaining certificate of fitness for occupation or CFO, or physical completion of the work that causes both parties to have a dispute. Another problem is terms such as the practical completion and sectional completion are often not clearly defined, and this also leads to misunderstandings between both parties. So the solution is by using a much more specific and well-defined terms in contracts to ensure all parties understand their obligations and expectations. So the next solution is by clearly state whether practical completion depends on obtaining the CFO or the physical completion of the project. The second lesson learned is by engaging qualified professionals for each project. So the problem is the lack of expertise caused misunderstandings and discrepancies between the parties. And complex contract clauses can be misinterpreted, and this can lead to disagreements, as we can see from the case itself between HLM Sdn Bhd and Uda Holdings and Uda Land. So the solution is by hiring much qualified professionals to manage and clarify all aspects of the project. So these professionals, especially legal experts, can ensure precise understanding of terms like practical completion, and this can prevent conflicts over definitions and penalties. Next. So the third lesson that we have learned from these cases is its dispute resolution mechanism. So inefficiency of traditional litigation, where legal disputes often involve lengthy and expensive procedures, cause delays in project timelines. So the solution is by establishing a much more clear dispute resolution methods, and this can include structured processes such as mediation, arbitration, or adjudication in contracts to address disagreements efficiently. So by implementing these mechanisms, it promotes much more open communication and proactive problem solving before issues escalate.
Next, the importance of aligning the contractual milestone with the external dependencies. There are a key example comes from the HLM Sdn Bhd versus Uda Land Sdn Bhd 2010 case. A significant dispute arose because the developer imposed the liquidated and ascertain damages (LAD) on the contractor, even though the contractor completed the work on time. The issues: delays in obtaining the certificate of fitness for the occupation or CFO. This case highlights the critical lesson for us. First, contract must clearly define who is responsible for external approval, like CFOs, and how delays in this process affect the deadline. Second, including the clauses to adjust deadline for external delays is essential to ensure a fairness. Additionally, using a clear and precise language in contracts is vital. Ambiguous terms like completion can create a confusion and dispute. Regular communication about the delays and external factors can also help to avoid the misunderstanding. Finally, updating the contract templates to reflect the modern complexities can save us from the unnecessary disputes like the one in this case. The next one, let's explore the importance of timely and transparent certification process. In the same case, the certification process itself became a source of conflict. The LAD was imposed because the certification failed to align with the actual progress of the project. To avoid such issues, we must clearly define the completion and in most cases practical completions. When the contractor fulfill all the contractual deliverable is a better benchmark than relying on the external approval like a CFO. Certification must reflect the actual facts and progress. Certifiers should avoid missing unrelated milestones when issuing a certificate. Additionally, contracts should include strict timelines for issuing the certification to prevent the unnecessary delays. Finally, open the communication between the certifiers, contractors, and developers ensure that delays are addressed early and collaboratively. Lastly, to the pro let's move to the proactive communication and documentations. In the HLM syndrome case, poor communication and unclear documentation created a misunderstanding about the project milestones. This ultimately led to the wrongful imposition of LAD. To prevent such disputes, regular meetings and updates between the stakeholders are essential. This discussion allows us to address delays and clarify the role and responsibilities. Details records of the progress, decisions, and communication must be maintained as a evidence to support a fair resolution when disagreement arise. It is also a critical for superintending officers or SOs to document their decision and certification transparently. Sharing the updates about the external approval like this CFO process keep everyone informed and aligned. Clear communication and true documentation reduce the ambiguity and foster a stronger collaboration among the project teams. That is all from us. Thank you.